Now let's go over the test results. In the list below, you can see all the exercises and tests that I've performed at this point. I've actually tested the patient multiple times at this point, so let's highlight the first test and click the preview button. This is an isometric test report. At the top is the patient information. I've blacked out our patient's information for privacy purposes. This line gives you information on the testing parameters. The graph demonstrates bilateral torque versus time. The right leg is in blue, the left leg is in red. As you can see by the torque lines, there's a big difference between right and left quad. To the left of the graph is the numeric data. The top set is for peak torque. The right quadriceps produced 65 foot-pounds at peak torque, and the left 15, for a 77% deficit. You also get a value for the coefficient of variance. This is how closely the 3 repetitions match each other. Ideally, this should be 10% to 15% or better. The variance for the right leg was really good, 4%, but it had 56% for the left leg. That tells me that for the left leg, the 3 repetitions didn't match each other very closely. This is either due to poor control, or she was fatigued by the time she got to the 3rd repetition, so that's why it was so much less. Another data point is the percentage of body weight. The right leg hit 48% of her body weight, but the left only did 11%. The next set of data down gives you the average torque over the 5-second repetition. This data shows an even bigger deficit bilaterally. Here it's 81%. The next set of data down is for the peak torque slope. This gives you a measure of rate of force production, which is similar to power. If you have questions about any of the information on the screen, you can click the help button at the bottom. When you're done, either click the print button or OK to exit. Now we're back at the main report screen. Click OK to exit. You can always click on the report button to return. But next I want to show you a progress report. Click on progress at the top. With progress reports, we're going to compare tests of 2 different dates. So let's go to the first time I tested our patient, on 12/11/2015. Highlight that test. If you look at the far right side of the highlighted line, you can see that on this date I performed a test for both the right and the left legs. With that date highlighted, let's now go back to the top of the screen and click on the initial button. Now let's go back to the bottom of the screen and highlight the second test. Once that's highlighted, you can go back to the top and click on follow up. Now these aren't the dates that I tested our patient in the video. She was tested at her 8-week mark and then again later at 12 weeks. If you look at the far right of the second test, you can see that I only tested the left leg on the follow up. With that test highlighted, go back to the top, click on the follow up button. When you're ready, click on preview. This is the isometric progress report. You can now see that there are 2 graphs. The top graph is for the right leg and the bottom graph is for the left leg. Since I didn't retest the right leg for the follow-up, there's only 1 line in the top graph, but there's 2 lines in the bottom graph. On progress reports, the red line represents the most recent test and the blue line represents the first test. At the bottom of the graph, you can find out the dates that each test was performed. For our patient in the video, the first test was performed on October the 28th and the follow-up was November the 25th. Visually, you can see she performed better on the second test. If we go to the peak torque data, you can see how much. On progress reports, you get a value for the first date, the second date, and then the percentage of change. The left quad increased from 15 to 32 foot-pounds at peak torque for an increase of 113%. The second set of data is for average torque. Her average torque over the 5-second period went from 11 foot-pounds to 28 foot-pounds. Instead of percentage of change, it tells you the increase in pounds, so she had a 17-pound increase. Below the average torque is the data for the time parameters. When you're finished, click OK to exit. Click OK one more time. There's a third type of report that I want to show you. At the top, click on Report, and then click on Involved Retest. This type of report allows you to compare bilaterally from 2 different test dates. Make sure that the second test date is highlighted, then go back to the top of the screen and click on the left button. And now let's go back down and highlight the first test, and then click on the right button. This will compare the data of the right leg on the first test to the data of the left leg on the second. The involved retest report is the same setup as the standard report. At the top of the screen, you can find the date that each limb was tested. You can see from the graph that the left is now roughly half that of the right. The data also confirms this. At peak torque, the left is deficient by 51%. You can also see that her coefficient of variance is much better. The first time we tested her left leg, she was at 56% variance. Now she's only at 8%, much better. Her percentage of body weight is also much better. The first time we tested the left leg, she was at 11%. Now she's at 24%. The average torque also gives us that same result. Here she's 51% deficient with a better coefficient of variance and a better percentage of body weight. When you're done, print your document and click OK. Click OK to exit. Lastly, I want to go over the remaining items on the report screen. I'll cover the annotation section when we go over an isokinetic test later on. You've already seen the preview button, but you can also click print to print a document directly from the screen. If you click the file button, it'll create your report in an HTML zip file. You can also click the Excel button to create a Microsoft Excel document. If you're ever going to delete a report, make sure you're being careful and you know what you're deleting before you click this button. The options displayed here are what we selected in the Software Preferences Setup video.